Mindy didn't know I was going to do this. Back one more. Okay, so this is like some PDFs of the gifts assessment we have, and these are Mindy's. Okay, so I'm giving you a sneak peek into Mindy's life. All right, she'll kill me for this later, but her highest 3 gifts that she has to offer a church is giving, mercy, and counseling. And as you can tell, she's very comfortable, kind of talking with people. Mindy's the kind of person you can come and just say, hey, I'm really struggling with this, I'm really struggling with that. There's not going to be any kind of judgment. She's not posting something to Facebook and social media. Pray for so-and-so. You know how Christians do that sometimes? Pray for so-and-so, and it's really our way of kind of revealing information they didn't really want revealed. And Mindy's the kind of person you just kind of, hey, I really need to talk to someone about this. And so she also has 3 other gifts that we call them, the test calls them latent. They're kind of like, they're needing to be developed a little bit more. And her 3 are faith, service, and organization. Chris will verify that the organization is something that she's trying to. But then she also has this kind of spectrum, and it shows really her top strengths and gifts that God's given her. And then all the way from like giving all the way over to like miracles. So if you're needing a miracle, just don't go see Mindy. I'm sorry, I'm just kidding. That's right. She'll pray for you though. I'm sure God will work. Going on to the next slide, we're having some kind of technical challenges, but I want to just highlight a little bit kind of what we're doing here, and we call them city teams. And we're trying to do something. We're trying to do church a little bit different in the sense that before we decide, these are the ministries. That's our kids program, by the way, right there. We can yell back if you want. You want to yell back? All right, 1, 2, 3. All right. We're much louder. Very good. All right. So we have city teams. This is a place where you can develop your passions. Some of you're going to discover, I have these gifts. Well, then what do I do with them? And many times people don't take the gifts assessment, number one, because they've done it before and churches didn't really know what to do with it. And so it just kind of feels like knowledge. It just feels like data. The other thing is people don't want to be pigeonholed. They don't want to say, well, you're this, so this is only. These are just starting points for us. And so Lilo is a team I want to highlight today. This is the group that comes in early, sets everything up, load in, load out team. They come in and just do a fantastic job. And I want to thank every single one of them, Dave Burke, Warwick, Nate, Kay, there's Mr. Ridge, all of them are all over the place. They come in real early and get the whole thing going, which is awesome. Would you give them a hand for me today, please? I want to honor them. Thank you so much. We have other areas. Now listen, I'm going to let you in a secret about me. When I'm singing and doing the shaker thing, I don't even know what that thing's called. What is it, shaker? Shaker? What's it called, Mark? All right, we'll go shaker. All right, I was right. All right, when I'm doing the shaker thing, I'm serious. It feels like this sometimes. You know what I mean? Like I'm patting my head trying to sing. So if you have a gift musically, we'd love to help you develop it. Hosting, if you like to entertain people, you like to just make people feel welcome. Some of you have that gift. I do not. It's an incredible gift when I see it. You like working with kids. You're going for the real sainthood kind of level. All right, you're working with the children. Outreach, you want to do something. You want to kind of have an opportunity to share the love that you feel in your heart for someone else. We have creative arts, tech, all those things. And we've had a bunch of tech issues today. We've actually not had very many. And so Mr. Dave Burke, he's kind of sitting in the front row. We're going to do this together. So I don't know, maybe we need to come up with a call sign when we're ready for the next. How about I just say we're ready for the next one? All right, that sounds good. Let's go to the next one. That they know. Let's go to the next one after that. All right, so listen, I want to talk today briefly about just kind of how we're starting out with the church. And I was thinking about, what kind of series could we begin with? And I really feel like as I talk to people, everyone's kind of running into this theme, that life seems to be getting more and more complicated. Anyone understand that? Like we got soccer and t-ball and baseball. We used to be able to do the snacks afterwards, and now we can't even do snacks because of peanut allergies, right? And so everything just seems to be getting kind of more and more complicated, and it becomes a little bit more challenging. So going on to the next one, I want to kind of talk about these issues. And our margins are a little off. That's okay. Why is it so complicated? I'll help you interpret that. Why is it so complicated? And I think there's 3 reasons why it's so complicated. I want to share these with you. Number one, I think because faith isn't fantasy. I think that there's an idea, whether you're in church, have been in church, or are new to church, you think, and I think oftentimes, that when you have faith, you just kind of, rise above all the issues of life. How many of you know that is not true? Faith is not fantasy. And so you're going to feel real pain. You're going to have real struggle. You're going to have real problems. And then faith is this thing that God gives us to help us through those valleys. So there's nothing else I can hold on to at times, the Bible says. And I'm going to have to really grasp onto my relationship with Jesus, which is called faith. And so faith isn't fantasy. So in fact, many times they talked about it in the Bible. This is what the author said in the Bible. His name was Paul. He said, listen, now, he's talking about the struggles he's having. This guy wrote a bunch of books in the New Testament. I mean, he was used by God to do amazing things. And look what he wrote. He said, now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I will know fully. He said, you know what this life is like? It's like looking into a mirror and really not seeing a great reflection. Really seeing fog. I can't see clearly. And I have those things in my life. There's things in my life where I don't understand exactly how it's all going to pan out, or how it's all going to shape. And because it's not fantasy, because it's real, I can't bypass this process. I believe there's another passage that I want to share with you. It says, we've been surrounded. This is Paul writing again. And this guy was snake bit. He was shipwrecked. I mean, he was serving God, and he was going through all these difficulties and challenges. He said, we've been surrounded and battered by troubles, but we're not demoralized. We're not sure what to do, but we know God knows what to do. What is that? That's faith. Faith is not saying, I just don't feel anything. You know, you get this idea in your mind like monks, you know, they go live on a mountain, and then nothing can touch them. But I don't think that's really tested faith. Tested faith is real. It's authentic. It's genuine. And that's the kind of faith that I think we all want when times get tough. And so we're going to talk about that because life can get a little complicated. And I want to kind of just take you through that. 3 main reasons why life gets complicated. First one, we have realities that I've created. What does that mean? Well, I will make certain decisions in my life, and it will have certain outcomes. And I can't quite get around it. I just kind of have to deal with it. So the first big reason is realities I've created. There's another part, main reason. Realities created for me. What's this? Is when the doctor calls you and says, hey, you're starting chemo tomorrow. My dad got a call like that last summer. Hey, we just got your test results. You're a sick guy. You're checking the ER tonight. We're starting chemo tomorrow. You did nothing to create that reality. You did nothing to deserve it. God's not punishing you. He's not angry with you. It's just in this world there's going to be trouble, and these are realities that are created for us. And they are not fun. They are not comfortable. All right, they're painful. The next thing, spiritual realities. We're going to talk about all 3 of these, but I want to go back to the first one, realities I've created. And I want to kind of give you an example. What is a good example of this? There's a guy named Boudreaux. He's a Cajun. And you know, Cajuns, I'm not from that area, but I've heard they're crazy. All right, they're just nuts. All right, Cajuns are crazy people. And Boudreaux was driving late at night, and he was really kind of swerving around the road. And the cops pull him over, and they know Boudreaux. Everybody knows Boudreaux. And a cop pulls him over and says, Boudreaux, man, I think you're, you know, we got a problem here. I need to give you a breathalyzer because I think you got some alcohol in you. He goes, I can't do that. I said, what do you mean you can't do that? Well, I'm asthmatic. I can't do a breathalyzer. I got asthma. All right, fine. We're going to take you down to the police station. We'll get a sample of your blood and see if your levels are too high. So you can't do that. And why can't I do that? Because I'm a hemophiliac. I faint at the sight of blood. I was like, Boudreaux. Okay, fine, Boudreaux. Walk this line. You can't do that. Why? Because I'm drunk. All right? And that's kind of, Boudreaux's kind of the example that I think we have, that we all kind of tend to have some Boudreaux moments where we just kind of, oh man, what was I thinking? And I've kind of made this big error in my life. And so that's first thing, realities I've created. Going on to the next one, Dave. And where we see this, it's really written pressure points is in relationships. This is where we see it happen. If you want to find out if you're creating any realities that are uncomfortable and complicated, look around at the relationships you have. And I will guarantee you, at least in my life, this is where all those complications kind of just nest, right? It's in my marriage. It's with my children. By the way, my wife is pregnant with our 5th child. She's going to be due in January. Yeah. And everyone's like, oh, you must love children. No, not really. I like my wife, you know. And so Relationships, 5 kids. Well, I never thought we'd have 5 kids. So 5 kids, we got relationships. What is that? It strains us, right? Relationships is where it all happens. That's where this you're either enjoying it or you're kind of, you're struggling through it. And so I want to talk about that. Moving on, for relationships to, what's that say, Dave? What's it say in your notes? I don't have my notes. Hey, can I get a program, actually? Yeah, I'm going to have a program of my own. You'd think I'd remember what I wrote, but I don't. Thank you, sir. Oh, I know why. Why is it so easy for relationships to get complicated? That's it. All right. 3 reasons. Ready? First one, because we need them. We need relationships. God has hardwired into us a need for others. Now, there's an image, I think I have it up here, of, remember this guy? Who's this guy? Yeah, everyone knows Marlboro Man, right? I mean, just kind of like, dude looks like leather, right? He looks strong and independent, and he's not the kind of guy that you're going to go up to and say, hey, man, I really want to pour my heart out to you and kind of have a heart-to-heart with you. He might tie you up with that rope and throw you away. That's the kind of guy he is. So this is the image oftentimes, especially if you're dealing with men, this is the image that we kind of get in our minds. So guys are way more reticent to have these kind of relationships, to understand this need. But this is not something we want. This is actually something we need. And oftentimes, we're running into some problems, and the relationships get complicated because we need them, but we don't know how to engage in them. Does that make sense? So we need these relationships. We don't know how to interact with it. We don't know how to make sense of it all. And there's a study out that actually says 46% of people who are lonely will die way sooner than people who have friends in their life. I mean, it's like a 50% drop. You're just, at some point in time, you have a 50% chance of dying sooner than someone who has those real meaningful relationships. And I'm not talking about Facebook friends, right? Facebook friends is not what we're really talking about. We're talking about relationships that you actually have some depth and meaning and purpose. There's another reason we need them. Keep going. Oh yeah, the closer the relationship, the greater potential for hurt. This is why it's always coming out in our marriages, right? There's a challenge there because those ones are super close. Let me tell you how it works in my house. Molly will be able to say something to me, and it's not what she says, it's just how she says it. And all of a sudden, I know whether or not she's happy, she's mad, she's really mad. And I know, I'm just kidding, and I know the second reason is the closer the relationship, the greater the potential for hurt. And here's why. God has designed his kingdom to be built through relationships. It's how he designed it. And so, of course, if you are God's enemy, where would you strike and hurt people the most? In the relationships closest to them. Why? Because it carries the most potential for hurt, but it also carries the most potential for transformation. When you and your spouse are one, or you and your kids, God has given you a heart for them, and you are surrendering them to him, and you are walking with him, man, that starts to really change things. That starts to give you energy and life. It can bring, it says it in Proverbs, it says 2 are better than 1. Why? Because when it's cold, they have each other. And there can be those cold days. So this is what relationships do. Finally, the last reason, it's a lack of real friends. I mean, we really don't have folks in our life that can really talk to us. I got a story about this, but I got to forewarn you. It might ruin your lunch for you. My parents are missionaries to Africa, so I was born there, and so we went out years ago, my dad and my brother and I. And the thing that always gets people sick over there is the water. You know, that's what really makes them sick. And so my dad's kind of just got all sorts of experience living there because he was born there too. And so he was out there, and we're getting on the plane to come back home. And my dad's like, man, my back is killing me. I was like, well, what's wrong? He goes, I think I got an infection. I was like, really? He's like, I need you boys to help me with it. I was like, man, Dad, I'm 15, man. I don't do that anymore, you know? Like, this is way beyond my comfort level, you know? And so Dad, sure enough, he pulls up the back of his shirt, and I'm not kidding you. There was a boil that was red as a tomato, that big around on his back. And my brother and I both vomited a little in our mouths, And then we were like, oh my goodness. It was just horrifying. And he's like, listen, I can't fly home on that plane for 2 days with this boil on my back. You guys got to help me get rid of this thing. And my brother and I look at each other like, can you believe this guy? What's going on here? And so he's like, just get some hot compresses and put it on my back. Oh boy, okay. So we get these hot towels. We got them burning. And we lay it on his back, and sure enough, it just kind of starts to you know what it does. Okay. But then it's even worse. All of a sudden, I see this, and this is the gross part. I see this little black thing squirming around in his back. And my brother and I are like, that's it. We're out of here, man. This is crazy. What's going on? And he's like, you got to get it out. I'm like, man, this is disgusting. I know this is violating some kind of child labor law somewhere. This is terrible. And sure enough, my brother and I get some tweezers, and we grab the stuff, and it was a little mango worm. And what happened is that he ate some fruit or drank some water with that parasite in it, ingested it, and I'm glad I'm telling this at the beginning of everything, not towards the end. And that grew into this little worm that protruded its way out to his back. I've never seen anything like that. My dad, when I was thinking of that is not something I want to relive, don't get me wrong. But it's a memory that I'm going to have with my dad. Like, Dad, remember when I pulled that mango worm out of your back? Man, that was crazy. But Dad needed help. He couldn't reach his back. He couldn't get to it. And every one of us are going to have those moments in our lives where we're going to come across our limitations of being able to take care of ourselves. And that's where friends come in. This week, I've had 2 separate conversations, 2 different people, of them challenging, hey, why are you doing things that way? What are you looking at? Why are you looking at it like that? Or hey, are you sure you're walking in the right mindset, the right spirit about things? And I cannot tell you what a relief it is to have friends looking over my shoulder. And I'm not wanting folks that are just coming alongside and just want, there's those negative nillies, right, that just come around and are just always trying to undermine, or making you feel bad. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about real, genuine love, where you come alongside and you say, listen, I'm going to help you with that problem you got, or let me pray for you. Those cards that we have on the front here, we have a group of women who pray for these requests. And you can remain completely anonymous. Whether you never come back or not, it's irrelevant. They are passionate about praying for other people. Why? Because we want to be a church. We want to be a people where we actually come in. And you know what that story about the mango worm really reveals? That's exactly what Jesus did with his disciples when he did what? What did he do with them that was really gross? Wash their feet. They'd been walking all day. They had dirt and grime and everything. And you need someone in your life to get into the messy areas of our lives, right? Is that right? We need that. And now we're a little put back by it at times, but at the end of the day, we've absolutely got to have folks that can come into our life and really get into it. Because you know what I know? I got issues. And you know what I know? We all got issues. Every one of us had that. And if we try to pretend we don't, we're just lying to ourselves. And so we got to have people, we got to have friends that come into our life and really kind of take us forward. This is what Proverbs says about it. He says, listen, as iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend. Man, when you guys have someone in your life that will come alongside and help you with something, you actually get better. You get sharper. Things get clearer. Moving on. 3 ways to complicate our relationships. This is the first thing we can do. If we want to complicate our relationships, we manipulate. Now, this is a hard one. But Leviticus says it like this: show your fear of God by not taking advantage of each other. Leviticus 25:17. If we want to complicate our lives, we'll try to manipulate other people. And oftentimes, listen, it's done with good intentions, right? Hey, Johnny, why can't you be more like, Billy? And help, do something like that. And we tap into the person's pride and insecurity to try to change their behavior. That's one way we can harm relationships. It says in 1 Thessalonians, never harm or cheat, for the Lord avenges all such sins. So manipulation, we have to kind of put aside. We don't want to have relationships where we're kind of angling with someone. The second thing we want to do, it says Matthew 6:5, This is talking about the Pharisees. It says, when you pray, don't be like the Pharisees who love to pray publicly on street corners and in the synagogues where everyone can see them. I tell you the truth, that is all the reward they will ever get. What's he talking about here? Pharisees were these guys who studied the law, and they followed it to the T. You know what they wanted? They wanted others to know that they followed it. They wanted others to know, not all of them, but some of them, to know how spiritual they were. And so as a result, they would walk around in public areas and just try to get the attention. What are they doing? They're manipulating people. Because if you got something real and genuine, you don't have to flaunt it with folks. It's in you. It's authentic. These guys didn't have something, but they wanted to have that appearance, that pretense of it. Second thing we do is murmur. I want to show you this picture. This is different kinds of heart murmurs. And so you have a normal beat and a normal beat, and then in the middle here you have this extra sound. That's what a heart murmur looks like. And that's really what oftentimes we do with our relationships. So what does that look like? If you have that extra comment or that extra thing that's said, when you have it in a heart, your heart's supposed to be pumping, do-do, do-do, do-do. And it'll sound like do-do, da, do-do, da. It's that extra thing that's making the heart not run as efficiently. And you have the potential of actually causing heart disease. And in the same way, these are kind of the comments that we can make to each other or behind each other's back where we're actually murmuring. What does that look like? We're actually talking or saying extra things about someone else. And then when they find that out, boy, does it get complicated. Hey, I heard you said such and so and made this comment about it, and all of a sudden we're like, deer in the headlights. And that is the kind of thing that, man, it takes this wonderful thing and can totally complicate it. Going on to the next one, it says in Colossians, be gracious in your speech. The goal is to bring out the best in others in a conversation, not put them down, not cut them out. Could you imagine if our tongue was like that heart that said those extra things? Could you imagine if we could tame it? And if you could tame the tongue, if you could figure out how to control it so that it wasn't undermining other people, what kind of a transformation? What would happen if we had speech that actually lifted up and encouraged other people? Finally, the last one is meddle. I've done this in my life where you're just kind of meddling with things. I've meddled in my marriage. And you think, well, how are you meddling in your marriage? There's some things that Molly and I have to come to realization. We can talk about it, but if I'm forcing something, I'm meddling with her life and her relationship with God. And spouses do it all the time. I do it with my children sometimes. I meddle with my kids because I think that's at times being a good parent is. But I know one day when they get older, what are they going to have to decide for themselves? Whether or not they want this. They're going to have to make those decisions. If I keep meddling and keep needling and keep pushing and pushing, then after a while, things start to break down in the relationship. And so there's times where Jesus actually did this in the Bible. He would send his disciples out knowing they were going to fail. They went to go cast out some demons and help some people and do this and do that. And they came back and they got their rear ends handed to them. Why would Jesus do that? Because he wanted them to understand that it wasn't his role to force everything. They needed to pursue God on their own. He didn't want to meddle with their life all the time. And he wanted them to learn, hey, this is how you do this. This is how you walk with God. And that's where he taught them, hey, if you don't pray and fast, if you don't have a communication with God, then things are going to break down. You're going to be powerless. Now, he could have told them that, but instead he had them experience it. There's some verses here. It says in Proverbs, whoever meddles in a quarrel, not his own, is like one who takes a passing dog by the ears. What does that mean? You see this stray dog, and you go up and you just yank on those ears. There's no reason for it. It does no good. Unfortunately, I've had some of those moments in my life, but look at how Jesus does it. This is how Jesus approaches people. He says, look, I stand at the door and knock, and if you hear my voice and open the door, I will come in, and we will share a meal together as friends. Revelation 3:20. So here's what Jesus does. He comes up to my heart, to your heart, and instead of meddling and needling us, he taps on it. He says, hey, I want to talk to you about this, or I want to help you with this issue that you're having in your life. He's not a meddler. He doesn't come in and push and force his way in. He doesn't practice that kind of shepherding, that kind of help in our relationships. I want to kind of bring you to kind of the conclusion. It says, how can we fix it when it's our fault? Is actually what it's supposed to say. How can we fix it when it's our fault? And I want to kind of first lead you into this next slide. You really can't, but we can own it. What do you mean you can't fix it? When I do something wrong, I have this tendency that I want to go and fix something. I want to make it right. And the reality is, God isn't asking us to fix anything in our lives. But what he is saying is, listen, if you'll surrender to it and take ownership of it, I'll start to work in your heart. I'll start to do something that only I can do. And there's times where I want to go in and I want to kind of, make it right and do the right things. And if I've made a mistake, I want to make it all better. And God has, I think, over and over taught me that, hey, just sit in it for a minute. Own it. Because if I go to my wife and I say, well, I'll make it better. I go to my kids, I'll make it better. Then it's really undermining and not really valuing what she's kind of gone through. Instead of saying, hey, listen, that was on me. That was my fault. And so this is why it matters, because Romans says, and if you're thinking, golly, that's kind of what I feel, I've done that at times in my own life. I feel like I've just, I have manipulated, I've murmured, I've meddled with things. I don't want you to feel bad. This is the guy that wrote earlier that I was telling you about, Paul. Listen to what he says about his own life. He says, I want to do what's right, but I can't. I want to do what's good, but I don't. And I don't want to do what's wrong, but I do it anyway. That's the guy who wrote a ton of the Bible. He says, listen, when I'm wanting to do what I want to, what I know is right, and I just can't seem to execute it and do it. So what does this teach us? It's really the key principle here is humility. And if you want to know what it is, I think it's just valuing other people. It's looking at other people's lives and saying, you matter. It's looking at them when we're interacting with them, when we're talking with them, when we're engaged with them, and valuing them. It says in the Bible, there's a passage that says in Philippians, it says, don't be selfish, don't try to impress others, be humble, thinking of others as better than yourselves. And then another translation says, don't push your way to the front. Don't sweet talk your way to the top. Put yourself aside and help others get ahead. My wife and I are originally from Michigan, and we had like 9-month winters there. It was so long and cold. And the thing about Michigan is it's rarely sunny. And so a day like today, everyone is like, oh my word, what is this orange thing in the sky? Because people don't see it often. And I'll tell you what, by February in Michigan, there were so many accidents, not just because of the weather, but because everyone's just so angry. They're just so fed up. And when you drive down the road, they'd be giving you the one way to heaven sign. You know that sign? Yeah. They'd be throwing that out quite a bit, and kind of reminding you of where you need to go and running off the road and everything. There's so much rage there. And that is just always underneath the surface. That's how our relationships get so complicated. And if we could practice humility, if we could walk into humility, that would be such a better way to live. The first reason, why do it? It's a better way to live. Your life is at more peace. You have a touch with other people. You're valuing other people. And you know what? The world is so, they're so used to not having or seeing that when you actually do value them, there is such an open door to develop something with them, to develop a relationship with them, because it's so rare. Everyone is living with a what? It's kind of, I got to get my attitude. That's really how the world is driven. So when you and I step out and say, wait a minute, I think we can actually take a step back and offer humility to other people, this is what prevents our relationships from getting more complicated than they already are. You say, how do I make my relationship, how do I show, because many times we want to go back and fix what we've done wrong. Really, all God is trying to do is get our posture changed. He just wants to have humility so that we remember, man, that was a really bad choice I made there. That was not what I wanted to do. And so as a result of that, it says in Proverbs, pride ends in humiliation while humility brings honor. That's the thing that God is wanting for all of us. How do we want to have an honorable life? You've got to have some humility. You've got to be able to put other people first. And if our relationships break down, it's a result of us really trying at times to do one of those three things. We're trying to force our way. We're murmuring about someone else. We're saying extra things. We're meddling with their lives. Whereas if we just show some humility, it can really get us much further. The second reason is how Jesus leads us. This is really a beautiful passage that he has. It says, take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. You'll find rest. It says, take my yoke upon you, for I am gentle and humble in heart. That is who Jesus is. Jesus approaches us not with a real, heavy-handedness. He approaches us by saying, hey, listen, I've taken care of all the pain, all the struggle, and if you will live like I treat you, there will be such a difference in your relationships. Look at these words, take and let. If you go back, take and let. Those are not the words of an angry God. Those are the words of a God who cares for us, who loves us, who wants us to be belonging to Him, who has a desire for us to have relationships with other people that are full and whole. But we've got to bring in that humility. There's two things. The last part of today, the one thing, I want to encourage you, if this is something that you're looking at your life, you're going, man, it's getting really complicated. Things are getting really difficult in my marriage, with my children. First question I'd love to ask you to ask God is, how am I complicating my own life? Like, what am I doing that's making things so difficult to move forward? How am I complicating it? How am I making it more difficult than it has to be? And then the second thing is, would you begin to untie it for me? My son Landry, he has these tennis shoes, and I don't know what he does with them during the day, but it's like he goes through a buzzsaw when he's running around, whether it's at school. So he comes home, and every morning, typically there's a routine of me having to untie these, I don't even know what to call them, the way he ties his shoes. And so I have to kind of get in there, and sometimes I'll have to even get like little flathead screwdrivers to like pull them out because they're so entangled. I'm like, what is going on with your shoes? What do you do all day with them? And I mean, that's something that, when you're running and you're late and you're trying to get all 4 kids out the door, the last thing you want to be doing is dealing with these stupid shoelaces. And so you're like, what is happening? What is happening? And so I feel what oftentimes my life is like that, in the sense that Landry will not, he doesn't know how to tie his shoes quite yet. So what he does instead is he just like wraps it around and just keeps like tying knots, right? And what does he do when it gets more knotty? He just like doubles down and pulls it even harder. So by the time I get to him, there's like a dozen knots, and every one of those dozen knots is a test of my Christianity. It's a test of my faith. It's like I'm going up the ladder. And so I struggle with that. And when he brings it to me, I'm having to be challenged. And I think a lot of us are actually approaching life like that, where I know I've done this for years, where instead of giving my knots to God, I'm sitting there trying to pull them apart and fix them and yank them. And as I do that, the only thing that's happening is that it's doubling down, and the knots are getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And so what are you going to do? What are you going to fix when it's all gotten messed up? And for those of you who've gone through a divorce, the pain of that, you might be looking at that going, oh my goodness, there were so many knots there. There's so many things I went through that I doubled down on it. I've done that in my marriage for years. Now, there was a point in my marriage where my wife kind of looked at me and was like, you're not so fun to be married to. We had those moments where she's shooting honest with me, she's being straight with me, and it was painful. And it wasn't something that I could just fix. It was something where I had to turn to God and say, God, I don't even know how to do this anymore. Will you fix this in my life? I was in the ministry. I was serving God. I was really serious about it all. And God basically showed me I could take that away so easily, so quickly, because you're holding on to it so tight. I want to encourage each of you today, as you're going through this week, there's going to be a temptation to do one of two things. There's going to be a temptation to take it upon yourself and fix what's broken. And if you would just for a moment, just catch yourself for a second and say, God, I need your insight here. I do not know how to handle this. If we started to ask God before we made those phone calls, before we had those confrontations, before we started really seeing those relationships get strained and stressed, if we go into it, just that little prayer at the beginning of that conversation can make a world of difference. But if you and I just say, well, we're just going to do it, it's just like Landry. Just doubling down on those knots and making them tighter and tighter and tighter. So I'm not asking you today to go and fix all the wrong that you've done. I'm asking you these two things. God, how am I complicating my own life? And would you begin to untie it for me? Because I can't do it. Warwick, if you'd come up. If you and I take that approach toward life in general, if we have that mindset and that attitude, things begin to change. All of a sudden, the stress and the pressure begins to fade. Let me tell you a secret I learned. I learned that figuring out problems is, it never ends. There's always problems. And if I want to try and live my life to where I never have that stuff in my life anymore, it'll never happen. That's not realistic. But you know what does work in the midst of problems? Peace. Jesus will give you this ability to totally be energized through the process. I was speaking to a friend of mine on Friday, telling me about his divorce he had, and he said, I made up my mind that I was not going to get bitter. I was not going to get upset, that God, the enemy was not going to take this part of my life. That I was not going to walk around with a chip on my shoulder, angry at God and angry at other people and angry at my ex. And those kinds of decisions have put him on a trajectory of blessing, of life. Why? Because he chose to release it back over to God. And I think we got this idea that if we made the mess, we should be the ones to clean it up. And I want to totally reject that today. And I want to ask you to just give it back to God. Whatever you've complicated, whatever you've messed up, whatever relationships are strained in your life, that you can hand that back over to Jesus. And he will take you through the process of being healed and made whole. He will do that. And he will move heaven and earth to start it today. Would you bow your heads, please? Close your eyes. I want to give you a chance if you don't know Jesus, if you've never had that opportunity where you really feel like you've given him your life, you've given him your problems, maybe you think that you've had to clean yourself up, I want to just pray a really simple prayer and ask that you would just repeat it to yourself. If that's something that you want to do today, you want to hand this over, hand your life over to him, just repeat after me in your heart. Jesus, I know that I need you, and I want you to take over my problems, take over the complications, take over the decisions and mistakes I've made, and I'm giving them to you. Come into my heart. I surrender my life to you. In Jesus' name, amen.